Hello guys, and welcome back to another episode here of Bareham Engines. So you can see guys, the sun is out, the sky is blue, and the Lambo is also out. One of 6 outings out of the year just to turn the tyres really, so we don't get any flat spots on the tyres and make sure the engine's not seized up. But yeah, always nice to just have sitting here all day. Just cheers me up just looking at this thing. More of a thing of beauty really for me than anything else, but yeah, absolutely love it. And sporting the Bareham Engines logo on the side as well. What can I say? Anyway guys, it is, what are we, Wednesday. A few things have changed in here. So the BMW 6 Series, you can see we've got the cylinder head on. The cams are in, although they're not torqued down properly, and there's a reason for that. People in the comments are going to probably have a little dig at me about this, but we've put the crank in. Obviously the pistons and rods are in the block. We've put all the bolts on the big ends and most of them on the mains. And what I mean by that is we're still 4 main bolts short from BMW. They're on their way from Germany. Hopefully, fingers crossed, they're going to be here tomorrow, but obviously we can't get the bottom end torqued up properly until we get those. But what I just wanted to do is get those bolts in, get it turned over. We've got the front cover on with all the new chain, etc. on, and all the new guide rails down there. And I just wanted to get the cylinder head on and torqued up, which Paul has done today, and we can get the cams in and laid out. So it's just basically a basic tool motor now. Then all we've got to do is, once we get those bolts, turn it over, get it torqued up, make sure everything turns, and that's the reason we haven't done the cams. So all the valves are shut. We can just make sure the engine turns freely. Obviously we've checked all the clearances. We haven't ground the crank on this anyway. This one was only in because it was using oil. Like I've said in previous videos, the rings are a bit knackered, so we've replaced them, replaced new bearings, all from BMW mind. So in theory, I know theory is a bit like saying we're assuming, but we've checked all the clearances, everything's fine. So all we want to do really, we just like to make sure once it's torqued up that it all turns nice and freely before we go on and set the time in, put the cams down and all that. But apart from that guys, as you can see by the look of it, bear in mind we haven't painted this one. Usually on the aluminium we always paint it, but this one has been vapor blasted. So obviously spent quite a few hours cleaning all this afterwards. Probably, if I'm honest, on an engine like this where you've got lots of waterways and oilways, etc., probably about the same sort of time cleaning this as one that is a bit grotty and we haven't vapor blasted. Obviously with all this webbing like you see on the BMW castings now, you never really get in there with the wire brushes and all the rest of it. But as you can see with the vapor blaster, it just brings it up like absolute brand new. All the front covers, nothing's painted here. It's all just as it should be really. So we just wanted to use this as a bit of a test piece really on the vapor blaster. This thing is as clean as a whistle now. We've removed all the oil gallery plugs and everything. And this is absolutely spotless inside and out. The good thing about the vapor blaster is you can get in the ports and what have you. I did say on this one before that it is we've got, because of the oil burning issue on this, the carbon was fairly thick in the exhaust ports, so we did have to use the soda blaster a little bit in areas, but it has come up like brand new. The other advantage of the vapor blaster is obviously these hydraulic lifter carriers. You know, you can blast those. They literally take seconds to do and they're very easy to clean. Inside the head is just like brand new. So whereas on the BMWs a lot of the time you sort of get that build-up of the brown, grimy, old oil stainy, if at very best in the BMWs. I think it's because people leave the service intervals too long. It just gets rid of all that and it looks a lot better than when you know, when it goes back to the customer. If they ever have to take the rocker cover off for any reason, it just, you know, it looks like brand new. It looks like you've spent that extra effort. Whereas if you didn't vapor blast it, as much as you go at it with the wire brush and all that, you're never going to get it out and it never looks great. So yeah, as a test piece, we're absolutely over the moon with that. Looks fantastic. And we're going to be doing that on as many engines as we can really, because it just makes them look fantastic. Following on from that, We have just had the go-ahead on this engine. So this is one that was on the pallet sitting over there. This is another 3.5 Rover V8, and I do believe this is in a Cobra replica kit car. John spoke to the guy originally, so I'm sure that's what John said it's out of. But as you can see, I was just saying about the oil staining on that BMW inside the head. That is exactly what I'm on about. So this here is particularly horrible. Obviously with this is the same sort of thing. So you've got, this is all enclosed in the crankcase, this. So it's, you know, it's just get this buildup of oil and people don't service them correctly and it just looks horrible. So this one, we may have to put a liner in this. You can see one of the bores at the back there is looking a little bit funky, but that is just where it's had water sitting in it. Again, with this one, this bank doesn't look too bad. Obviously we've got to bore this block, but these bores here, I think it's this one really, doesn't look too great. So if that doesn't clean, we may have to put a liner in that, but it's not the end of the world. So this is going to be a great test piece for the Vapor Blast cabinet. The con rods, obviously the crank lot, not looking too good on the main bearings at all. So that is going to need a grind. The customer needs us to do a little bit of modification, I think, to the water pump and the front pulley, because the car is obviously shorter, I think. It needs to sort of go in a bit. So we're going to be balancing the whole crank assembly on this. Paul has obviously took the pistons off the rods. He has torqued up the big ends and measured all those, and they are absolutely fine. In fact, we've got a little bit of room to hone those out. So the next step on these is going to give them a wash, get rid of this sort of residue of oil on it, which we're doing now. We're not putting them in the soda blaster like that. We are, sorry, the Vapor Blaster. I keep calling it a soda blaster. We make sure that they're dry at least, and then we put them in. We're going to blast them, and then we shall run the hone down those and size them correctly, and they're going to be like new, ready for the new pistons. So you've got all the bits here, the inlet manifold, front cover, all the rest of it, all that there, we're going to stick straight in there and give that a good blast. So yeah, hopefully guys, now we've got that thing working, I've been actually quite looking forward to doing one of these Rovers, because I know that most of the time they come in looking horrible like this, and if they're all blasted and tidy up, you know what the last one was like. I think it was March, last month, when the owner picked it up out of the MGB V8. It looked absolutely fantastic when it was done. So yeah, really been looking forward to that. Right guys, now first of all, before we start, I want to apologise to many of our subscribers and customers that have been going on one of our websites. And when I say one, you know what I mean in a minute. They've been going on one of our websites and getting a price list of jobs, machining, etc. Then inquiring about a job. When I get back to them on an estimate or a quote, they then say, well, that's quite a bit different to the price list that's on your website. Now, I just want to apologise for that, because that is one of our old websites, our original one before John and I even took over. And we've asked, we don't pay anymore. We've asked to take it down and it hasn't been took down. So I do apologise, guys. That is not the site that we use anymore. If you want a price or whatever, just email us, ring us up. Probably better to ring, to be honest, at the minute, because we're inundated with emails, and we will get back to you with a more up-to-date estimate. Which leads me on to today's thumbnail and title. So, yes, we've got customers that look at our wrong website. Obviously, with the labour charges and that, we're well out of date there, but not that out of date that it doesn't look too obvious. But the reason for today's thumbnail and title is we do still get customers that seem to be stuck in a bit of a time warp when it comes to pricing, etc. We have people come in for a price of a piston. Maybe the older chaps with the older vehicles obviously haven't had machining done or bought parts for quite some time, and they wonder why a piston is now more than £5. I don't know whether it sort of seems to be this industry, as I've said to you before, it's with the way people treat us in here, with the warranty side of it. It just seems to be something different in the motor trade than any other trade. No one seems to query supermarkets, garages, anything like that on pricing, on VAT. Just still seems to be this underground, back alley sort of attitude with the motor trade. Don't know why. You know, we're a legitimate VAT registered business, so I don't see why we should be treated any other way, but we seem to be. Which then leads me on to an example. Now, I'm not sure whether I've done a video on this chat before, but we had a customer once, and this was in 2020, so it's not recent. It's just giving an example of that sort of time warp, trying it on attitude, really. So we had this customer, bought an engine in to be done. He then liaised with us through email. So he stated what he wanted doing. So he wanted the engine reconditioned. It was actually a mini engine. I asked him if he wanted an estimate or a sort of quote. No, it's fine. I've had one done before. I know what it is. Don't worry about it. Just crack on with it. It needs to be done. So that's what we did. Anyway, I've emailed him over the invoice, said that he'll come in and pick the engine up. He didn't say whether it was he was pleased with it or he wasn't pleased with it. Anyway, when he's turned up, he's come in the office and he was fairly stern, didn't look very happy. And the first thing he said to me was, "I'm not really happy, no." And I said, "Oh, sorry about that. What seems to be the problem?" And he said, "Well, the price, to be honest with you, I wasn't expecting it to be as much as it was." I said, "Well, I thought you said you had one done recently." He said, "Well," he was clutching two bits of paperwork, one being the invoice that he'd just had for this mini engine, and I wasn't sure at that point what the other piece of, what the other document was. So he starts harping on, he going through the invoice that we give him, and he was actually really sort of quite stern and rude to me and digging in. At that point, I don't know whether I'd had a bad day, but I said, "Listen, I don't know what to say. I did ask you if you wanted an estimate." I said, "Let me go and get John." Got John. John's come in. Anyway, John was in here for probably a good 10 or 15 minutes with him. And in the end, the chap took his engine and went. Now, the story was from John. I said, "What was that all about?" And what he'd actually done, the other bit of paperwork that he was holding was actually an invoice from Barham Engineering, which was the company before John and I took over. So bear in mind, this was 2020. So we'd probably owned the company for 3 years. I thought, Christ, that invoice must be more than 3 years old. No wonder the price, because back then we charged £40 an hour. So maybe that was what he had a problem with. He said, no, he was harping on to me at the same thing. He was going through all the itemised processes and what have you, and the parts. Then he hits me with the other bill from Barham Engineering. John's took a look at it. He's gone through and he's thought, well, first of all, the hours don't seem to be right. And there's a couple of processes that we do now that we sort of didn't do then. He thought, then he's looked up at the top right hand side at the date and it was 2003. So the guy had bought in a 17-year-old invoice and wondered why it was now more. I mean, back then we charged £35 an hour. We didn't go to the extent that we do now with all the sort of the check-in and what have you, especially in the last year. You know, we sort of basically blueprint an engine when we go through it. So yeah, he was well out of date. Didn't occur to him at all that prices may have gone up in the last 17 years. I mean, it's like going in Tesco and kicking off at the cashier and giving them a receipt for 17 years ago. I mean, things have gone up. But like I say, in this game, it doesn't seem to occur to people. They seem to be stuck in a bit of a, as soon as they walk through that door, bit of a time warp. So yeah. Let me know, guys, if you own a small business and you're in the motor trade or whatever. Let me know if you've had any sort of tales like that. But yeah, as I say, guys, that's probably why it's best. If you've had engines done in the past or whatever, don't worry too much about that. Just get in touch with us and we'll give you a more up-to-date price or an estimate. So yeah, bit of an interesting one, that. Had a couple of little jobs recently. These two here are Harley Davidson barrels. Now the customers sent these in to be bored for a big bore piston, and these are the pistons here. They're Wiseco's, but what I didn't realise is actually how big the piston was compared to the barrel. Now fortunately, this is obviously a done thing anyway, but fortunately there's a big old FD liner in this thing, but I've actually had to bore both of these out 1/2 inch. So we're going from pretty much 3-inch bore to 3.5-inch bore, and you can see it's took it right out thin, but there's still probably about two 2.5 mil thickness on that liner down the bottom, and then up the top, you can see there, we've still got a good sort of, I would say 2.5, 3 mil up the top there. So yeah, as I say, it's obviously a dumb thing, but those things have been on the blooming boring bar all of yesterday, really. But now I've finished them, John's just got to hone them out. Got another Cosworth block here off a customer. This is a 200 block, and he sent it in for the ductile iron liners. So you've seen me do this before. Westwood liners, who we always use, they do a specific ductile iron liner for the Cosworth, so I bought a set of those. They're the ones I always put in. Now this ductile iron is, you know, a lot tougher than the standard cast iron, and that really is, for us, it's like the new Nickersil liners, what they used to use. You don't get any trouble with these, brilliant. So we're putting those in to take it back to standard. He's bought his own pistons. So I might have to do a bit of modding on the pistons, I'm not sure yet. But one of the advantages of putting these liners in for this is, if you just have a look down there, whether I can get focus, you see there's a wire ring in there. Now that is what they used to do on these Cosworths pretty much before the multi-layer steel head gasket. Back in the day when it was just the composite gaskets, to get those things to bite into something and give them that extra sort of extra strength around the fire ring, they used to put wire rings in either the block, mainly the block, or the cylinder head on some stuff. The only trouble is with them in the block is you can machine them out, but the wire's still half in there. So really, to machine the top of that block and get those wires out, well, sometimes I've had to take over 1 millimetre off the top of the block, and then you've obviously got to mod the pistons and all the rest of it. But the advantages of putting these liners in is, obviously with the flange at the top there, that eliminates that wire. That's just going to machine straight out ready for the flange anyway, which means I haven't got to deck this block anything like what I would have had to. So that's another advantage. But yeah, just chomping out the first bore now. Did promise this customer to get this done for next week, because I think he's got a meeting the following weekend, so it's a bit of a push on that. So tomorrow, bit of luck, I should have that done for him. So this here hanging off the crane, guys, is the Ford 4000, I believe. That's 3-cylinder tractor block with the big old liners in. This is the one that the other day I was machining out. We got the 100 thou plus on the external of the liner. Fortunately, it did clean. So what I've done is I've put that in with a Loctite as well, just to bout and braces. The flange on the top was exactly the same as the old one, so that is just pushed straight in. We've just refaced the top of the block very lightly, deglazed the other 2 bores because they measure fine, and that is all ready to go for the customer. So happy days on that. Fortunately, we could get that 100 thou, otherwise we were running into either scrapping the block or having to get a liner made, which is at the moment 5 or 6 weeks. Right, so for all of you that are getting a bit sick of hearing about the daily dose of E30, turn away now or close your ears for a minute or two. But as you can see, the only thing that's changed today, guys, is we are missing a door on the passenger side. And as of, well, by the time you watch this video, we're going to be missing the other door as well. So the reason that door is off is because Stuart is obviously, he's doing the paint work. And like I said on the last video, I think this section here, which we didn't really think of, has got this grooving where a trim sort of goes in. If you look down the line of the door, you can see there on the M3, that is just flush down to that step there. So this here needs to be filled in. So what Stuart has done is he's basically let us a strip of metal in there, welded that in there, and then filled it with lead and machine it all back. The thing is, if you put filler in there, it's about 2 or 3 mil deep. That filler is eventually going to crack and cause issues and look rubbish, to be honest. So he's doing it properly. He's done the one door over there. This door's coming off, and he's going to be doing that one. So that is where we are with the E30 at the moment, guys. Also, just very quickly, I've had a little bit of a change of mind. So this is my plan, and I'd like you guys to comment down what you think. But I've been talking with Wayne, and Wayne is the guy that owns the E30 M3 that I showed you the photo of the other day, the real trick one, the DTM replica. And if you notice on that picture, Wayne is running centre lock wheels. Now, I have obviously looked at centre lock wheels, but the only ones I managed to find are very, very expensive. And obviously this being 4-stud, I thought, do you know what? First of all, we've got to transform it to 5-stud. Then we've got to get the hubs, and then the wheels. It's going to be astronomical. I can't be bothered with that. But fortunately, Wayne has put me on to a company called Image Wheels up in Birmingham. They've been really, really helpful. I obviously told them I've been speaking with Wayne, and they know Wayne anyway because he's a very good customer. And what they are going to do, or what they can do, is they can bespoke make the centre lock hubs that bolt onto the 4-stud pattern, and then we can run the centre lock wheels. So they do a 17-inch wheel, a BBR wheel, which is a sort of replica of the original DTM sort of split rims that the E30s run back in the early 90s, late 80s, I suppose. But we want them in 17-inch. They can bespoke make them, so they can make them any size you want, any width. So we are in talks with them. They sent me a price, and it is way less than I thought it would be. To be honest, it's probably similar money to buying another set of wheels and converting to 5-stud once we've had to buy the shocks and what have you. So I'm thinking, guys, I'm almost certain I've made my mind up that is the way I'm going to go. Centre locks, it means we haven't got to go through the rigmarole of the 5-stud. We can just go centre locks, and more than anything, the look is going to be unreal at the end of it. You've got to, if you have a DTM replica E30 M3, my opinion is you've got to run the centre locks. Let me know down in the comments what you think though. Well guys, have a great weekend. Thanks ever so much for watching, and we will see you on Monday. Cheers.